What's the most cked up thing you saw at a sleepover? Sleepover in friend's basement with 4 of us there. I think this was 4th grade. Sometime around midnight the host friend's dad opened the door at the top of the basement stairs to ask if we wanted snacks. But right as the words started out of his mouth, he comes tumbling down the stairs and hit his head pretty hard. He didn't move for what felt like forever, and we heard from the top of the stairs some delirious yelling. My innocent self thought it was the host's mom, afraid because her husband just tripped and fell. My other friend later explained to me that, no, the host's mom was drunk off her ass and pushed the dad down the stairs. So yeah, I guess I witnessed a wife try to kill her husband. Geez, what happened afterwards? Crazy drunk mom calls my parents the next night and keeps them on the phone for over an hour, and based off my parents' reaction I thought I was in trouble for some reason. Looking back, they were probably just questioning whether they'd ever let me sleep over at that house again. Anyway, nothing really legal ever happened, I don't think. The dad was a super great guy. Never filed any charges. Just filed for divorce about a year or 2 after this happened and got out. This is of course putting pieces of the puzzle together years later. I kinda drifted apart from that group of friends, and by high school we didn't really talk anymore. I did see the dad at a high school football game. He was with a very attractive lady and looked happy. A friend of mine at school used to recount her side of entire conversations from the day in her sleep, like a tape recorder. It was both weird and highly informative. My best friend at the time had a birthday sleepover, group of 9-year-olds, myself included. My best friend also happened to invite a kid that was often bullied at school. No one in our group had any problems with him, and we just played like kids did. When it came to sleeping downstairs after a fun birthday party, around 2 AM the bullied kid started crying quietly to not wake anyone up. I, for some reason, was awake and asked him why he's crying. He began saying that he can't stand getting bullied anymore and wanted to kill himself. For my 9-year-old self at the time, who had no concept of suicide and taking their own life, I could only remember thinking, why would he want to die, lol. It got to a point where I started freaking out because he wouldn't stop crying. I called my best friend's father upstairs. He came down and calmed him down. The bullied kid's parents came to pick him up around 3 AM because he would not stop crying. The poor parents didn't know their child had been struggling at school, immediately got him counseling, and his bullies were kicked out of the school after an investigation. From what I saw on social media last year, the kid graduated from university and is doing well. Looking back, it was incredibly sad and terrible that a 9-year-old was thinking about taking their own life, and I am so glad that I called my best friend's dad's help upstairs instead of ignoring him. That was a very mature and wonderful thing you did for that kid. You may have literally saved his life. Well done. I slept over a friend's house when I was around 10 and we were playing Nintendo. At some point he yelled shit, and without a word his dad comes storming into the room, pulled him up and just started spanking him in front of me, then took him out into the hallway to scold him. Then he just came back as if nothing happened, but with a red face and teary eyes. It was the most awkward, uncomfortable night of my life, having to continue on pretending to have a fun sleepover after that, but I felt so bad for him. I did my best. It was what I imagined sleeping over at Butter's house would be like. I have another sleepover story that always sticks in my mind too, but does not deserve its own post, so I'll just summarize here. Watched Aladdin at a b-day party. Woke up later that night to friend's older bro jerking off noisily in his sleeping bag with the movie paused on a scene of Jasmine. The second story is hilarious. I didn't see this happen, but I heard about it afterwards. When I was in 9th grade, a group of boys on the basketball team were hanging out in one of the hotel rooms on an overpass trip and decided to prank this awkward unpopular guy. They covered up with blankets and started making motions like they were masturbating. The target of the prank asked what they were doing. They told them we are whacking it and asked him to join. Well, he did. They pulled the cover off him and revealed that he was particularly well endowed. His name was James something, but from that point on he carried the nickname Mule. I, as well as many other people, heard the full story when we were wondering why he had the new nickname. Haha, we got Yuli shit. It's huge. Haha. We weren't actually jacking off. Tricked, yo, what the fuck. Dog. My friend's older brother would get mad at her for small things, went in his room, lost the TV remote, shut her door too loudly, and proceed to beat the shit out of her, pull her hair, and hold her down, and punch her in the sides. Literally throw her across the room. He was almost 10 years older than us, and easily had 150 pounds on her. He would eventually tire from the beatings, leave the room, and she would go back to playing with me like nothing happened. I remember being so unbelievably shocked by it, but eventually became desensitized because of how normal it seemed to her, and how unfazed she was by it. I was in the 4th grade when I slept over at a friend's house. It was me and 2 other girls. It was my first time sleeping over at someone else's house. I was always too scared to stay overnight anywhere but her, and I were close, and when I hung out at her house during the day we always had a great time. Well, I'm not sure what happened, but we were eating popcorn and I spilled some kernels down my shirt. We all ran to the bathroom laughing and got the kernels out. Some ended up in the sink. When her older high school age brother found out, he proceeded to beat the hell out of her. Me and the other girls ran to her room and shut the door. All we heard was her screaming. I felt so guilty I just wanted to disappear. She finally came into the room red and covered in tears. We never talked about it again. And I didn't have another sleepover till high school. Holy shit. Did you spend the night? Were the parents home? Was this the first time it happened? Did you think the brother would come after you? Yes. I spent the night laying in her bed scared to move. I wanted to call my parents, but I didn't want to ask my friend. And the phone was in the kitchen. Every noise I heard in the house I thought it was him coming to get me next. I just remember starting at her table in the corner of the room that had stuffed animals on it, wishing I could turn into one of them so he wouldn't beat on me. From what I remember, the parents were home, but I think their bedroom was downstairs while the rest of the bedrooms were upstairs. Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night, he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us in his room for the night. We weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The doorknob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. Holy shit, my inbox. Okay. The jar was for emergency use only and was emptied and washed in the morning if he used it. Probably rarely used it, since most kids that age can hold it all night. He was a bad kid and stayed in trouble. Pretty sure the lock thing was to send him to his room and make sure he stayed there. Don't know about the parents' sexual habits, but I'm not surprised that most of Reddit immediately jumped on the drug-fueled Dodge's responses. What if there was a fire? That's what the gallon of pee was for. Edit. Holy cats, did this off the cuff quip blow up? I had no idea that this would resonate with some cultural meme that I had never heard of. I had to go look at the sidebar of r/unexpectedf2 and then of r/tf2 to learn that there's something called Team Fortress 2, where I guess they use pee bottles to put out fires. And what the heck is Jarrett? Thanks for all the awards. Kind strangers. I didn't know there was a table slapping award. Once in the army, we were at a relatively line guarding station for 4 soldiers that lived there alone. In the night, the security precautions made it easier to pee in bottles rather than go out to the toilet. So on the upper deck, we had bottles of pee and bottles of drinking water. Once someone filled the kettle from the wrong kind of bottle. That kettle went straight into the trash, and the smell lingered for too long. Not really fucked up, but I was terrified. One night I slept over at my friend's house. I wake up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 AM or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. LOL. I remember I was once wishing for time to stop, and all of a sudden I felt really weird in my shins. And when I looked up, my mom wasn't moving, and I got super scared. Obviously time didn't stop as she moved a few moments later and there was background sound that I didn't realize was there. Oof. Got a bit of time shins tingling. Not something I saw, but one of my friends in high school told a group of us girls at a sleepover that she'd been babysitting the previous weekend and the girl reported to her that she was being molested by her uncle. My friend was so upset and scared to tell her parents. They were family friends and hadn't told anyone. We made her go upstairs and tell her mom. Her mom called the other family and we basically heard both her parents sobbing off and on all night. The other parents called the cops and as far as I recall, the uncle was arrested and spent some time in prison. My friend was really scared she'd have to speak in court, but didn't have to. That's rough. But I'm glad you guys advised her to do the right thing for the kid she was babysitting. When I was in the 6th grade I was going to stay the night at a friend's house, but we ended up at another kid's down the street. This guy ended up talking about how he would hump his bed until there was a wet spot on his boxers. He ended up doing this while we were in the room watching TV and then showed us the wet spot, and that was how I learned how to jerk off. Same. I was so confused when I saw the wet spot in my bed after doing this. I actually ran to my parents asking them why my pee was sticky. Haha. The relationship you must have had with your parents for that interaction to not be unspeakably horrifying is enviable. I remember I had my first wet dream and told my dad and he calmly, in a friendly manner, told me about it saying I was feeling sexual in my sleep or something along those lines. Never felt wrong about having wet dreams since then. Edit. So this is what getting awards feel like. Thank you kind Reddit buddies. Peace. Thanks everyone for making my most upvoted comment I've written on Reddit be about my wet dream. Just how I imagined myself to go up. My first wet dream happened while I was sleeping in my parents' bed. They quickly changed the sheets and explained that it was a normal and natural occurrence. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other two again. Damn. Sorry that happened to you. No worries. I was upset for that night, but was fine afterwards. One of the kid's parents paid their police officer friend to fake arrest the kid and act like my parents were pressing charges. Haha. Yeah, I need a further explanation on that one. I remember my mom speaking with the mother of the kid. She said we had a police officer come back quote talk to so and so. The phrase back quote talk to was in air quotes, so I assume that meant the police officer came to scare him straight. I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with two other girls when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. If you don't mind me asking, was it an accident or suicide attempt? He claimed accident, but he had a lot of stuff going on, so we all assumed failed suicide. When I was like 9 or 10 I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy shit did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. Edit. I have no idea how this guy turned out. We moved away soon after and googling his common name is like looking for a John Smith. Also another guy with the same name was murdered in the same town. It wasn't him, so it's buried pretty deep. Had a friend like that. Went to his house and accidentally went in the good living room and he freaked out. I thought it was super weird, but he got the vacuum out in order to remove my footprints from the living room carpet. It was in the thick pile. Not dirt or anything, but it meant you could see where I walked. For a second I thought it was funny, but he was so scared of his mom that it really freaked me out. They also had to shower sitting in their bathtub so that they wouldn't splash water everywhere. Super sad that people that crazy even have kids in the first place. That is a really shitty way to grow up. I hope he's okay. Yeah. Controlling parents breeds a lot of resentment. Especially when you hit that stage, when you start thinking for yourself, wanting privacy, and question what you've been told your entire life. Nothing like having parents you can't emotionally trust and you're always afraid of. Grew up with a father who was bipolar, OCD, and very controlling. I couldn't sit on the couch and press my back to the back of the couch because I was so terrified. It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I realized I had PTSD from it. I stopped seeing him when I was 13ish, but the damage was done. You don't realize how messed up it is until you're older, or at least I didn't. My friend starting having phone sex with her BF while we were watching a Pixar movie. I hid in the bathroom for like 20 minutes so I could convince her I was sick so I could get a ride home from my mom. We were also in junior high. I like how you had to specify it was a Pixar movie. Like, this would be fine with the Expendables or some shit. I feel that mentioning it was a kids movie helps add to how messed up the whole experience was lol. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up, and her mom took me into the bathroom and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. This one is my favorite, haha. If you are new to TattleTale TV, please subscribe. We have new videos every day. Stay tuned for more coming up next.